Hello, and welcome to episode number 270 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week moving forward by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have Pat Evans. I have Sam McQuillan. Yes, we are back like a cockroach after a nuclear winter. Phoenix rising from the ashes. It is here. We are back. You can't go anywhere without listening to us again on a weekly basis as we talk about the business side of this crazy industry, boys. Took a little bit of time off as we were kind of getting some stuff in line, but here we are, back rocking and rolling. Glad to be back with both of you fellas.
Yeah, glad to be back. It's going to be weird kind of trying to catch people up and seeing what we can fit in and remember. I mean, there's going to be things I certainly don't recall as we get going.
But that means there's a lot less talk about the shit you don't care about. So
that's true.
If you're not.
So there we go with all this. So again, it will be some recap stuff, but we'll try to keep it as current as humanly possible. Of course, just head over to legalsportsreport.com if you need catching up on any of the stuff that happened while we were gone. All of the written stuff is over there. And of course, you won't have to worry about that as we move forward. We'll keep you up to date on everything. But certainly one of the biggest stories is not only this is relevant now, but something we've been talking about here on the podcast just a ton, and that's just taxes and how all of this is going down, all of these tax bumps and things that are happening. And Pat, it's, you know, we had a very interesting thing go down in Illinois that I don't know for sure we really saw coming.
No, I definitely don't think we did. I mean, entering into the legislative session, well, first of all, you have to go back to last year when they took away the 15 flat tax on sports betting revenue and inserted a tiered system from 20% to 40% based on how much revenue the company makes. Now, through 6 months of that fiscal year, the only two companies, I mean, they got there in 6 months and they're still the only two companies now a year later in that 40% zone is DraftKings and FanDuel. So you're like, oh, geez.
Shocker.
Yeah, you're like, okay, this is a pretty targeted tax increase. Well, then you come to this year, entering the legislative session, you had Governor J.B. Pritzker say, you know what, we're going to have a pretty big budget deficit. We need to come up with some way to create more tax revenue. Let's maybe think about iGaming. That seems like a good place. Well, you get going. That doesn't have any legs in Illinois. But then kind of out of nowhere, they inserted a 25-cent per bet on the first 20 million bets tax. And then above that 20 million bets, they inserted a 50 cents or upticked it to 50 cent, which it might not surprise you to learn the only companies that took more than 20 million bets were FanDuel and DraftKings. Yeah. So again, a pretty targeted bet. And now since then, you've had three companies, FanDuel, DraftKings, and Fanatics, say, hey, we're going to institute a 50 cent per bet tax on the customer, or fee. I guess it's not a tax to the customers, but a fee to kind of help make that up. Because first of all, the tax last year was a huge increase that they've kind of mitigated through, you know, less advertising, less promos, the like. And now they're just getting to the point where how do you make up that extra money that you're being charged and still be profitable?
Yeah, Sam, we look at this and, you know, something I went on a rant on other programming that I do and all of this because, you know, as we've seen, and you've been covering this long enough, you know how this works, right? It's a copycat industry. So another state is going to see Illinois do this. And I guarantee you, as we are covering other states in the months to come, and as other states start to talk about things, someone is going to bring this up. And like someone is going to say, well, if they're doing it, why aren't we doing it? If they're doing it, why aren't we doing it? And next thing, this all trickles down to us, the customer. And this is bad for business. And this is what I can't understand why these states don't get. If you're supposed to be serving the people, to not understand where this is actually going to go, and it's always going to go, and we're going to be paying for it, is just absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at play here. One, most legislatures view, you know, this is a sin tax. The reason sin tax exists is to theoretically curb people from using these cynical products or whatever. Gambling is lumped in that. But a lot of the argument for legalizing sports betting hasn't been to get more. I mean, some of it has been tax revenue related, but most of it has been to bring things from the offshore into the light. So I think we have to go back to when every legislature was legalizing sports betting. It was at a time a lot was during COVID, when states actually had a huge surplus of revenue. They kind of viewed these as big businesses, big opportunities. There was a lot of talk about, the sports betting boom, all the money it was going to bring, all the leagues. And a lot of states wanted to keep their taxes relatively low. And then it kind of all changed once you had New York enter the mix with its 51% rate. The ironic thing here is, Matt, you bring up that now states are copying each other. But at the time when every state was setting their own tax rate, every state was saying, oh, well, we do things different in Kentucky. We do different things in Ohio. We do things different here. Everyone, and we saw that in how they wrote their rules. Every state had a different way they regulated sports betting. You had certain things weren't included. Like in New York, I can't even bet on who's going to win the MVP of the NFL, solely because New York wanted to do things different and not copy another state word for word. Now you have the opposite, where you see, hey, New York had 51%. I'm sure that was a thinking in Illinois. Why don't we just I know we just effectively jacked it up to 40% last year. Now why don't we do basically what's a 50% rate, is what these companies are telling us. And for the gambling companies, they really have no other choice. They're kind of at the whims of the legislature. Whatever they want to do, they're going to keep raising it however much they want. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people go offshore, because at the end of the day, most people don't price shop. So 50 cents worse on a bet, I don't think most people will notice that. And if you're a big bettor, it certainly won't impact you. Like if I'm betting $1,000 on something, I have to pay 50 cents more. Maybe I still have better odds on that book anyway. I think the really interesting thing here is, to kind of finish this rant, is how effective these books are going to be in kind of recouping this lost tax revenue. We saw DraftKings float this surcharge in several states last year. Now you really only have this one state where it's going to happen in September, it looks like. But in my mind, what's stopping, if FanDuel and DraftKings aren't seeing customers leaving because of this, what's stopping them from adding this fee in a low tax state, like I can't even think of who's low anymore because everyone's changed their rates. You want to help me out with that, Pat? Who has a low tax still?
I don't even remember anymore now either.
I was going to say
Ohio,
but that's
Ohio's still at 20%.
But I think this is going to show us that the books can just charge more and more from the customer, and the customers are going to eat it no matter what, because like we always talk about, you're going to bet who you bet with, and you're comfortable with the technology. So I think this actually could maybe be a good thing in the long term for books. It's going to allow them to just take more money from customers.
I am curious about, and sorry if I'm cutting you off, Matt, but I am curious how it could affect the high volume, low amount parlays that, a lot of my friends at the bar, when we go out after softball, they place a bunch of dollar parlays. But if each of those now carry an extra 50 cents, how much does that affect it in the long run? And if parlays are the huge moneymakers for these sports books, what does that mean ultimately?
I don't think they'll care, but that's just me.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a different take than you, Sam, because I do think that the vast majority of people are micro bettors. And the thing is like, if it's costing you, like Pat just said, say it's costing you 50% more per bet, right? Well, if we agree that most bettors are losing bettors, then your bankroll runs out way quicker, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so how often, how often will people reload? Yeah, people are going to reload, but if you're having to reload like at a way quicker rate than you have been in the past, like how is that going to affect some of these guys? Like, are they going to start to notice like, well, damn, I used to like only have to reload like once a month, and now I'm doing this like twice a month now. Like this is not as fun. Like this isn't as cool. And the other thing for me is where you said we're not going to drive too many people back offshore. I mean, even if we drive some, isn't that just anti exactly what we were trying to do in all of this? We were trying to bring people back as opposed to like.
Was it what we were trying to do? Or what we were saying we were trying to do?
Yeah, like drive people back offshore. I mean, one of the things that is certain in all of this, whether or not they're going to go offshore with it or not, there are a lot of people who are just more exposed to sports betting because of the legalization of it. And through exposure, you've seen this in every gaming industry that there's ever been. People become more savvy. It happened in the poker industry. It happened in the DFS industry, and you become more savvy of what's going on. And so while sure, there's a huge contingent of people where I think price sensitivity doesn't matter at all, and they're not going to worry about it, I think there is a contingency of people who are going to be like, man, what the hell is this? This sucks, and then maybe they do go seek alternatives, and hey, maybe great for the Kalshis of the world and the whatever and stuff, and stuff like that. I mean, if they're seeking alternatives and they, so I mean, again, I have a little bit of a different take on all of it maybe than you do. I think that there is going to be some sort of, maybe not in the super short term here, but like, I think there will be some people either flee the industry and or flee the legalized books because of all of this. Again, like a lot of my buddies have $200 bankrolls, right? And like, that's what they're rolling with. And if they got to re-up those $200 bankrolls at a much more rapid rate than they did in the past, because there's a 25 cent or a 50 cent charge on every single bet, then I think that that's something that they would really consider going, maybe I'll do something else, or go somewhere else.
Yeah, to put a bow on it, I think, regardless of our different kind of takes on this is going to be something beyond just a tax change. I think we can all agree on that. It's not just this Illinois raised their taxes and that's it. It's going to be some kind of change in customer behavior, whether it's going offshore, whether it's going to a different book, or more money in the pockets of the books and the investors realizing that they can keep squeezing money out of people. And then we haven't even covered the unintended consequences. We don't know what those are. So this is beyond just a tax hike on the biggest companies in Illinois. It's going to have a real impact across the industry, whatever it is.
And I think before we move on topics, I don't know if you were going to or not, Matt, but I mean, now we just look at other states that have raised in this session: Maryland, Louisiana, New Jersey. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of it. And then you even have a couple others like Ohio, which there was another, they just 2 years ago went from 10% to 20%. Mike DeWine, the governor, went ahead and proposed 20% to 40% this year. That didn't get through the legislature, but a different senator, a senator, not the governor, and this didn't finish either, but he introduced a 2% handle tax on top of the 20% revenue tax. So if that passed, that would, create all sorts of other ripple effects from this. So yeah, people were looking at New York saying we want more taxes because we can get them. Now people might be looking at Illinois and saying, well, we could do this, and we'll see what the fallout is. But it's a lot of crazy stuff on the tax world in sports betting right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, I think, for me, whenever I look at it overall, and maybe because I am a gambler, and it hits me a little bit, it hits me a little bit closer to home, I guess, and all this, because I'm like sitting here thinking, if Nevada did this, which I think they'd be the very last state on the face of the planet to ever do it or ever, but like if Nevada did this, and I'm looking there, and like every time I hit the button and I just saw like 25 cent fee, 25 cent fee or 50 cent fee, how that would just burn and eat at me every single time I hit the button. You know what I'm saying? Like seriously, like it would eat at my soul every single time that I did that. I don't know, and actually this, I guess we can put a bow, and I actually want y'all's opinion on this, which is, and if you're these books, right? So you sign up and you're like, okay, we're going to operate in your state. And then like you adhere to like one set of rules. And then you are literally just at the whim of whoever decides to come in and do some other stuff. Everything just gets changed all of a sudden. Like imagine the and this is just like the outcry that would happen. And this is just like massive hyperbole here. But like you like get a mortgage on your house, right? And you're like, okay, this is what I can finance and this is what I can afford. And like, okay, this is the house I can get. And then a year later, like, yeah, it's actually going to be double that. Like, you're going to have to now pay, you know what, now you're going to have to pay double that. Or like, we would lose our minds. Like, but it's just like in this, we're kind of like, well, yeah, whatever. It's a sports books. It is. I know people like accuse me of being a shill. Listen, we hammer these guys when they do something wrong. So I do not feel bad about saying like.
They don't love us. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get all the time like, oh, you take over these books. I'm like, dude, when they do something wrong, we talk about it. It's like one of the first things we do. However, I do at least understand where they're coming from in this situation where it's kind of like, okay, we've paid this stuff, we've done our whatever, we've set up all this, we've hired our experts in your state, we've done all that, and then a year later you come and you completely change everything that we thought that we were going to do. That is kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I don't blame them at all, one bit, saying, hey, we need to get a little bit more just so we can keep offering a good product for you. Like that's honestly what it seems like they're doing.
At the end of the day, it's like paying for the sins of your fathers. People view gambling negatively because it was legal and in the shadows for so long. There's a lot of other reasons people view gambling negatively, but it's a lot more palatable or politically palatable to kind of fuck over these gambling companies than it is to fuck over whoever's in charge of mortgages and everything. Yeah.
All right, boys, we got to move on to another very, very big topic that's out there right now. And while this has been going on for a little bit, still definitely relevant. And that is the state of California, whichever one of you wants to go ahead and tackle what's going on over there. And this is actually not sports betting.
No, you want to take it, Sam, or you want me to just kind of lay it out first? And
why don't you lay it out?
Okay, so there's actually two things happening kind of simultaneously, which are not great for the sports betting and online casino adjacent industries, I guess I'll say. First is Attorney General Rob Bonta came out and said DFS is illegal. Not just pick'em, not just whatever, all DFS. So that's interesting. It is not a legally binding opinion.
Which, whatever that means.
Whatever that, I mean, he can go on and enforce it more, which is crazy. There's going to be lots of lawsuits that come out of this, I'm sure, and it's going to be a very long legal battle to determine what's happening. You've had Prize Picks change from house to peer-to-peer.
Underdog's still there.
I don't think are going to leave in any sort of, without any fight, I imagine, which is interesting. Then on the flip side, legislatively, you had a assembly bill make it through the assembly. It was it was just a tribal gaming bill that just kind of was changes some laws,
minor stuff,
nothing major.
Yeah.
Once it was in the Senate, though, a new language was inserted to prohibit online sweepstakes casinos and sports books and whatever the dual currency sort of thing. That has tribal support in California, which if anybody follows California at all in this industry, and I'm sure you do if you pay attention to this industry, that's a big deal, is the tribes are behind it. It made it past its first committee this week. And this is Thursday. That was, I think, Tuesday. So it's got legs. It's already through one chamber. So if it passes the Senate, the Assembly just needs to concur. Basically, in the committee, there was a little bit of hesitancy of like, hey, why did this pass? And what's the rush? Or why did this get inserted? What's the rush? Kind of some long-term fallout sort of things. But the tribes are supportive of it. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with the tribe. The SBA, the Sports Betting Alliance, is behind it, which to have those two parties in agreement is kind of crazy. Not great for the sweepstakes industry. Again, does this pass? We'll see. It has up till September this session, and it can carry over to next year. But in any case, that would be bad for the sweepstakes industry. And this does seem to be the state that they might be putting their feet down. They've gotten lots of cease and desist and other states' legislative action against them. But they've kind of pulled up stakes in those states. But California might have too big a stakes for them. I said stake
Sam,
a lot.
One thing we can't argue with is there's 35 million people in California. So no matter what the market is and what the product you're offering, it's a big piece of whatever of the pie of whatever that might be.
Yeah, to Pat's point, there's a reason that these companies aren't in a rush to leave California. There's a reason that they're saying, oh, it's a legal opinion that's not legally binding. There's a reason they're trying to fight it here versus other states that we've seen them exit pretty quickly. Even the fantasy companies like Underdog and Prize Picks, I believe, both paid fines to leave New York and agreed. And there was something similar in Florida where they kind of said, we'll try to act in good faith here and maybe we'll get a bill down the line. It was quite different in California, which is, it was funny. I was on Sports Grid the other day with Craig Mish, and he was asking, it seems like they just don't want any sort of kind of gambling in California with all this stuff. And I was thinking, yeah, that's what the law says. The law says there's no sports betting in California, which has in turn pushed people to these gray market sports betting adjacent platforms. I'm sure the same people who would bet on a legal sports betting platform are the ones that are upset that they're going to lose these pick'em platforms potentially. Like it's a parlay with player props. It's just under a different mechanism. And it's the same ones playing these sweepstakes casinos or sweepstakes sports books. Like you can't tell me that if there was a legal sports book and there was also a sweepstakes sports book that 10 out of 10 people were going to stay with the sweepstakes sports books. The only reason these companies exist and don't want to leave California is because there's no legal sports betting option. To the point of the tribe's influence, I think that's really interesting here is because, right, we've seen these companies exist in California for some time. We saw a couple of years ago, the tribes obviously spent over $170 million against getting sports betting legalized, which was a huge loss for the gambling industry, which really got kind of put on its ass. They spent the most money on a ballot measure they ever had, and they lost against the tribes. And where that's pushed us kind of right now is the tribes are working kind of behind the scenes with the sports books in the state. It's kind of an enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing. The sports books don't like these companies, these pick'em companies, these sweepstakes companies existing in California because they're kind of thinking, why can't we do what they're doing? And they get to do it for free. So it's no coincidence that maybe they're closer to a deal than they've ever been. All of a sudden, we see this bill change kind of at the last minute. There was another bill that would have kind of legalized and protected daily fantasy sports and pick'em that was supposed to be introduced a couple weeks ago, and then that kind of fell apart at the last minute. A lot of people blame the tribes for that as well. So I think we kind of put the pieces together here. Tribes and sportsbooks semi close to a deal to get sports betting done, and they want to make sure that there's no competitors. They're squeezing everybody out in that case. But yeah, then to Pat's point, this is not the last we've heard about this. These companies are going to fight it. Underdog already filed a lawsuit to stop the opinion from coming out. The judge said, no, you don't need to do that actually, because it's not legally binding. So we waited years for this opinion to come out. It's something that since Kamala Harris was the AG, people have been asking for. All of a sudden it comes out now. So again, the timing is everything. Now I think the next step is, okay, we've been waiting forever. Is that actually going to get enforced? You know, we saw Texas a couple of years ago put out an opinion that wasn't legally binding or whatever, and that wasn't enforced. These companies are still there. So, you know, when is, you know, push going to kind of come to shove here? A lot of things are being pushed, but when is it going to shove?
Yeah, Pat, like one of the things that's interesting just about all of this, and I don't know if we have the actual figures on what piece of the pie California is for all these companies. I know that we talk a ton about, you know, sports betting and iGaming, and that's being the end goal for many of these companies. But also, just if you are DraftKings and FanDuel and you are serving the largest state, right? Like you are serving the biggest market. And granted, it's not the way that you wish you were serving them, but you're still touching base with these people. You still have email lists. You still are gathering client information. You're still getting all of that stuff in the hopes that one day, no matter how far down the line it is, that maybe you can pull something off over there. So while it's probably not a super significant revenue point for those companies, it is important mainly because of the ancillary stuff.
Yeah, I think especially now, especially for FanDuel and DraftKings, you're going to do what it takes to stay in California the best you can, because that's the next frontier. I mean, besides Texas, but California is California. It's way different than even Texas. So that, yeah, to your point, they're going to want to stay there and keep that building, because if and when, which it is just an when, not an if, yeah, California goes, they need that. They need California, you know, make it best.
They don't want to be cut out of it.
Yeah. And so, you know, and that is why the SBA and those sports books are now working with the tribes, is to make sure they're included somehow, some way. And yeah, those databases are going to be important. So I think for sure for them, they're going to do what they can to keep their stakes in the ground. Ha! I'm going to just see how many times
you're making me hungry, man. I might have to hit up a steakhouse later.
This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. If you want to order, like, you know, whatever, you know, order your
Omaha
steaks. Yeah. All right, Sam. So let's get into the big beautiful bill, and not the other side of it, but there is a.
That's what they used to call my grandpa, actually. Big beautiful bill.
You know, you had to find those. You had to find that stuff on VHS somewhere. But anyway, we're looking at the big beautiful bill, and we're trying to parse why the internet went crazy. You know, and the thing is. There was, as you dug into, as it's a big bill, so it encompassed a whole bunch of different things. And sure enough, it did touch the gaming industry as well.
Yeah, this is a huge, obviously Trump's huge tax cut bill that he just signed into law. I think it's like between 4 to 6 billion in tax relief and budget cuts, something like that. But you know, in order to have all those budget cuts and tax relief for people, hopefully, you have to pay for it somehow. So it's not really known exactly where exactly this provision in the bill came from. But there was a provision in the big, beautiful bill that changed a rule that's been in place since the 1934 Revenue Act, which is very important for professional gamblers. If you it allows you to deduct 100% of your losses. Only if you itemize deductions. So if you win $100,000 playing some game or winning some sports bet for the year, but you also lose $100,000 on another sports bet, it makes it so you don't have to pay taxes on that loss. You can write off that loss if you break even, essentially. So this changed it from 100% to 90%. Which effectively means, correct me if I'm wrong on the math, guys, but if you lost $100,000 on gambling last year overall, you would then have to pay an extra $10K in taxes on that as income, on money you didn't actually win just because if you aggregate all your money together. So, I used to cover tax policy in a past life. It can be a very contentious kind of area, but I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Everyone is saying like, what the hell is this? Why would we do this? And I think this goes back to what we were talking about before, is gambling can kind of be an easy target sometimes, especially if you're trying to raise revenue, which we're now seeing on the federal level. I think maybe because, to your point, Matt, that now gambling is such a part of our life and has become so much more mainstream. It could very much be the case that somebody just thought, hey, why don't we just change this from 100 to 90%? Like, it's basically the same thing. Nobody will care. But if you're a professional bettor, you don't want to pay $10,000 extra in taxes on something you didn't win.
Didn't realize
that is why.
Yeah, you didn't even make this money, which is crazy. They're taxing you on money you lost. So I know people get really angry about high tax rates in states, but this is even technically it's more than 100% you're paying here. But we're obviously seeing some resistance and some people agreeing that this might not be a good idea. Pat, I know you've been covering a couple of bills now which have been proposed to get rid of this provision in the big beautiful bill.
Yeah, before hitting those, I did just stumble upon an article just before coming on here that it was detailing how a bunch of senators, it apparently, to your point or question, Sam, originated in the Senate Finance Committee during the big beautiful bill process. And so it was probably just inserted, and probably, to your point, was just somebody crossing out 100% and writing 90% and saying, hey, that'll
still an A on a test. Yeah.
That'll get us a couple dollars. Well, this article talks about a lot of GOP senators not having any idea what that was or what they were voting for. Didn't know they were voting for this now that it's come out.
That's shocking.
Controversial. So it's interesting. But yeah, to your point, to lead into me, there are two Nevada congressionally led efforts to end this or to get it back to 100%.
Shout out to Nevada.
Yeah, the full House bill sponsored by Senator Cortez Masto and co-sponsored by Jackie Rosen and Ted Cruz. And then on the flip side, you have Representative Dina Titus from Nevada, who is always a champion for the gaming industry. Also, the Fair Bet Act. And so you got the full House Act in the Senate and the Fair Bet Act in the House. These acronyms are incredible. They had to have spent more time coming up with these acronyms than the actual bill language, which is simply
100%.
striking the 100% or the 90% and inserting 100%. So I want to know how much more time it took than to actually write the language of the bill, which again is super simple. It's incredible.
Yeah, this is super interesting because this is one of the rare times that I've actually seen everybody just come together after something gets done. And I have not seen one defense of this. It's only been like, oh, yeah, I don't really know. That doesn't seem right or whatever. Like, no matter how wackadoodle something is, like, you'll always get this one person to come in and be like, no, this is why, and this is why this is great. And we should definitely.
Maybe we should invade Canada.
Yeah, like that is like not happened in this. Like, everyone's going like, wait a minute, I voted for, so you could lose money and then you still pay taxes on losing money. That doesn't seem right. Now, does it? It's like, no, it doesn't seem right because it's not right. It's absolutely insane. So hopefully common sense does actually win out here. And maybe they even look at the whole excise tax stuff. Maybe they can look into, again, we already seems like we have like the government's overworked as it is. And it's like having to get hand paid for anything $1,200 or more on a slot machine or a video poker or something like that also is just insanity at this point. Like, there's no reason to do that. You have to fill out all these forms and send them in. It's like, you never leave with the 1,200 you want. Like, you piss away another half of you're never winning the money anyway. So it's like, raise that up to a different level, to a higher threshold. That was from the 70s and all of that. Like, again, I know we always say, like, it always just seems like gaming is more of a target than it is a like, hey, let's try to make it better type thing. But I don't know why we can't at least try to do both sometimes. And so hopefully some of these bills actually get taken seriously and maybe even look at some of these other things that just don't make a ton of sense along the way with all of that. Okay, Pat, let's get to Maine and let's talk about online casino efforts there.
Yeah, so I don't think it's any secret, but online casino, despite hopes that someday it would have the same wave that sports betting did, has not had that. You've only got, 7 or 8 states that have it, including Michigan here where I am. But yeah, I mean, a couple states tried to get discussions going this year. They didn't really go very far, including in Maine initially. It was tabled back in early session. then started picking up steam randomly in early June. Did pass the House. The Senate said, all right, fine, we'll put it on the appropriations table, which is this big table with 13 members. Anything that has a fiscal note and affects the state revenue has to go through this. Weirdly, not many bills end up passing it. So I think that was kind of a thing of, hey, we'll put it on here and won't get across. Well, this year, an odd amount of bills came out. I think 300 bills were sent to the appropriations table. Usually, I think it was, I forget the exact number, but it's like 15% come off. This year, 40% came off. So 117 bills went from the appropriations table to Governor Janet Mills, whose administration did testify against online casinos, which it gives the 4 tribes there in Minnesota, not Minnesota, Maine, M states screw me up, especially here in Michigan. Gives the 4 tribes in Maine control of the online casino industry. And you've got 3 tribes that are partnered with Caesars and 1 with DraftKings for online sports betting. So Mills's administration testified against it. So we figured once it's sent to her, she might veto it. Well, instead, she said, among 59 other bills, I'm not signing this. We'll see what happens. It's going to go. So it's basically sitting until the legislature comes back into session next year, which at that point she might veto it and they can do it. Or I think she might just let it die, which I don't.
Make up your mind, Janet.
I know. I just need to research a little bit more on the main process and what actually happens if she doesn't ever sign it. That'd be good for me to do right after we get off.
There, make yourself
hardest working man in sports betting journalism.
And then for you here, Pat, just to let you know, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana. Those are all your M states. So now that you can get that out of the way there, yes, yeah. There's
listen, it's really hard to be going in and out of Michigan and Maine and Maryland, Minnesota, and keeping everything straight. It's hard.
I agree.
The governors and the key legislators.
Let's put a bow on this episode with a little bit of sports news, and this is of the bad variety. Sam, we had a couple of guys in Major League Sports come out, and it was found out that they were doing the naughty.
Allegedly
doing the naughty. Yes. Okay. All right. Yes.
I want to preface it with that. Yeah. Yeah, you could just call this, matter of time. Every couple months we get new sports betting kind of scandals, investigations. But first you had Malik Beasley of the NBA. He was actually second in the NBA in 3-pointers last year and was a free agent in line for about a $45 million payday, according to a bunch of reports. But first day of free agency, as soon as he was kind of about to get paid by the Detroit Pistons, it came out that he was under federal investigation for potential violations of gambling laws and or league policy. And according to a bunch of reports, it stems from bets placed on games that Beasley was playing in while he was a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. There's been a bunch of really interesting videos that always surface whenever you hear this kind of thing on social media. I definitely remember when the whole Calvin Ridley thing happened, which feels like forever ago. I think Theo Riddick or someone put out like a montage of times that he tried not to get tackled or something. So you never know what's going on here, but there's a bunch of interesting videos with Beasley just like not playing defense on possession or running at the end of a game to score, to get a spread. Allegedly, these were from games he played in as a Buck. They're monitoring potential prop bets that he might have manipulated. There's actually one really interesting kind of case here I want to talk about. There was a rebound prop for Beasley, which was like the most bet prop of the day, which I think we know from the Jonte Porter case. Anytime you have a random kind of guy like Malik Beasley be the number one bet on like his rebounds, he's not a big rebounder, he's a shooter. Ton of money came in on the over, pushing it to like minus 230 odds, which is really strange for a run of the mill prop bet. And then it like severely cashed on the under. So, or maybe it was the opposite way around. I think it was a bunch of money came in on the under and it like he finished with like 6 and it was only like 2 boards he needed. So that kind of raised some red flags at these integrity monitoring firms, which work with the sports books, work with the leagues, and also work with federal investigators. I think it's really interesting here that this is a federal investigation. So the league hasn't commented. The Pistons haven't commented. They acknowledged it. They did not sign Beasley like was expected. They ended up signing Duncan Robinson to $45 million for 3 years, which might be just as crazy as betting on your own games. He's like 30 something and can't really play defense, can only shoot. Got benched on the Heat last year, but that's an aside. But Beasley also reportedly has a ton of like lawsuits going on where he owes his barber like thousands of dollars. Must be getting some good haircuts if that's the case. Allegedly, he owes a bunch of marketing agencies a lot of money. So this is a guy who clearly, I think we can say, had money problems, was in line for a huge payday, and now gets flagged for this kind of betting thing. The first thing that comes to my mind is like, why would you not do this on an illegal book or an offshore sports book? Like, especially if you work for the league. And it's funny, there's like videos of him playing and like there's a FanDuel like logo on the court or something, or another sports book. And it's just like, dude, like maybe don't use the apps that literally you have to give your information to and they track you. Like they're going to find out if you use a legal book. So it just makes me think too, how much is going on, you know, with the offshore stuff, how much isn't getting caught. And I think, again, we do have to spin it like it's a good thing this is getting caught. Bad thing it's happened, but it's a good thing this is getting caught. And yeah, and go ahead. We can get to the next guy.
Go to great clips like Kirk Cousins and maybe get an endorsement deal, and then he wouldn't have these money problems.
Fix all the money issues.
First of all, his haircuts aren't going to be ungodly expensive because you're at Great Clips. But
how
shameless plug.
In all honesty, right? So, how do you rack up thousands of dollars worth of haircut?
That's what I'm saying. Go to Great Clips. If you're in that big
at that point, you just buy a barber chair and like you just have it at home, and then like you tell a dude, hey man, $50 a week. You just come on, like whatever, tighten me up like once a week. It's costing you $200. Like how are you running? How are you running into thousands of dollars in debt on all this? It's absolutely
speaks to his character, probably.
Yes, I mean seriously, when it's all
his decision making.
Yeah, it definitely does. But to your point, though, Sam, yes, this is, at the end of the day, this is still all good. We're catching dudes that are doing bad things. That's the whole point of legalized gambling, whole point of these monitoring services. Anytime things look weird, something gets flagged and people look into it, and then we go in and we punish those people that are doing the bad things. We talked about this before we came on air and started recording, but what wouldn't you give up for 8 figures a year? And my list is basically like breathing. There's almost like nothing else.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, like I think that's the only thing I would have to commit to doing for 8 figures. I mean, like, what is there? Think about the thing you love most in life, and for 8 figures a year, and for a finite amount of time. Again, this isn't for like life. Gamble your ass off when you're out of the NBA. It doesn't matter. Do whatever you want to. Gamble on every single thing on the face of the planet. It's just while you're there, don't do it. Can you even fathom what? I mean, Sam, what do you, would you not watch Knicks basketball for like 3 years if I was going to give you $10 million a year to not do it?
Yeah, it's not only a monetary thing, it would probably be better for me emotionally and psychologically. And plus, I got to pay a lot of money to watch the games anyway. So in a heartbeat, I would even go as far to say as I would become a Nets fan for that amount of money.
I mean, like, whoa. Pat, you have written multiple books on beer. Would you give up beer for
in a heartbeat?
3 years?
That's not even.
I was going to say,
just become a rosé guy.
Yeah,
like whatever it is. I mean,
no, I'm in your boat. I would definitely give up pretty much anything for a couple of years to make that.
Yeah.
Versus,
it's a finite amount of time. Like they're not saying like you can't do this for life. It's just not while you're getting paid by the league. Anyway, we're going to talk about it. There'll be way more stupid athletes, so we'll talk about it on the podcast through all this, guys. We ran a little bit longer than we usually do. Obviously had a lot of stuff to catch up on here. We will get back to our 20-25 minutes here as we roll forward with the podcast, but appreciate you guys hanging around. Appreciate you guys continuing to subscribe, rate, review, doing all those good things. And we will be here on a weekly basis moving forward, keeping you updated on all of the craziness that's happening here in this industry. As always, the stories are written out on legalsportsreport.com. So go in and take in all of the time and effort that these guys are putting in, listening, summarizing, doing all the things so that you do not have to. For Pat, for Sam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.